Welcome to Watson Wire. Today we're talking about Teng Chang Khim's challenge regarding the campus alcohol ban and the Chinese school curriculum. So this all kicked off with a really significant statement from the Prime Minister, Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim. He came out publicly supporting the ban on alcoholic drinks on university and college campuses across the country. It was framed, very clearly as promoting student welfare, keeping the educational environment, healthy and clean.
Right, and it's important to grasp the initial framing, particularly the political angle. The Prime Minister took pains to clarify, didn't he? He said this was about institutional policy, about student well-being on campus. He really emphasized it wasn't aimed at curtailing the rights of non-Muslim communities, outside of the campus environment. The focus was meant to be strictly on the atmosphere within those educational institutions.
Exactly, and that specific distinction, what happens inside the institution versus personal rights outside, that's precisely what the former Selangor executive councillor, Datuk Teng Chang Khim, latched onto. It was, quite a brilliant move of political chess, you could say. He didn't just reject the ban outright. Instead, he sort of accepted the premise, the reasoning behind it, and then pushed that logic much, much further to what some might call its politically awkward conclusion.
Yes, that's what's so interesting, how quickly he pivoted the whole discussion. It went from being about, say, campus rules and student discipline, straight to the heart of Malaysian cultural and educational policy. It was quite a leap. His main question, which he posed publicly, was really analytical. He asked, essentially, look, if the government is so concerned about the mere presence of alcohol, or even the implied encouragement of it. So concerned that it warrants a complete ban within an institution, well then, what does that mean for the Chinese language curriculum, the one used in our national schools, primary and secondary?
Ah, I see. So he's drawing a direct line from campus policy to classroom content. And his argument was that if you follow that strict principle that any mention of alcohol has to go to avoid encouraging it, then logically, the government would find itself needing to censor culture. That was the implication. Specifically, he pointed to deleting classic Chinese poetry, poems that use the word for alcohol or wine.
Exactly. And that's where it shifts, doesn't it? It stops being just about enforcing campus rules and becomes this potential clash over textual integrity, over cultural heritage. What Teng Chang Khim did there, politically speaking, it's like showing how applying a rule too broadly, maybe beyond its original intent, leads to a result that seems, absurd or maybe even damaging.
Right.
And the underlying fear he tapped into is clear. If you follow the campus ban's moral logic to its absolute end, you risk having to fundamentally damage these centuries-old texts that are really central to teaching Chinese literature, history, and culture.
Okay, but for that argument to really land, you need strong examples, right? Proof that this isn't just some minor issue, that these references are actually embedded in the curriculum. Why are the specific verses he mentioned considered so important? What's really at stake culturally if they were, removed?
Oh, absolutely. These aren't just random lines. They are really core texts in Chinese classical education, mandatory stuff for countless Malaysian students over the years. Their value isn't about, telling kids to drink, not at all. It's about teaching history, teaching metaphor, appreciating language and aesthetics. Removing them wouldn't just be seen as tinkering with literature. It could be interpreted as, a form of cultural sidelining. They represent a shared heritage for a significant community.
So let's look at one of those examples he used, the most famous one probably. It paints a very vivid picture, doesn't it? Asking where a wine shop might be, the shepherd boy points to Apricot Blossom Village. You can almost see it.
That's a perfect illustration of the issue. It's not about selling wine. It's a whole scene, a narrative in miniature. It's from the Tang Dynasty, a high point in Chinese poetry. It speaks of travel, landscape, simple human interaction. Just that one line teaches so much about classical verse, about imagery. To cut it because it mentions a wine shop, you'd be erasing a vital cultural touchstone.
But let me play devil's advocate for a second, just thinking about the political strategy. Isn't there a risk that by bringing up these, let's face it, quite extreme examples of potential censorship, Teng Chang Khim might actually distract people from the original goal, which was presumably keeping university campuses safe and alcohol-free?
Well, that's the exact tension he's leveraging, isn't it? Deliberately creating that friction. His argument is that the reason given for the campus ban this idea that banning the mere presence prevents harm or encouragement. You can't just isolate that reason. You have to see where it leads if applied consistently. The extremity of the literary examples is the point of his challenge.
Okay, so he's forcing the question.
He's asking, if you're going to enforce a zero-tolerance policy against even the idea or the mention of alcohol, where do you possibly stop? Suddenly, the line between, say, a drug-free campus policy and censoring cultural heritage becomes very blurry indeed.
And this connects to the philosophical aspect too, right? You mentioned that the wine in these poems often isn't literal. He brought up that line about living life to the fullest. Quite profound, actually. One should enjoy life to the fullest when things are going well. Do not let the golden cup be empty, facing the moon.
Precisely. That verse uses the golden cup and the moon as symbols. Symbols of good times, fortune, maybe the fleeting nature of life itself. It's a poetic way of saying carpe diem, essentially. Appreciate the moment.
Right.
No teacher reads that line and thinks, instruction for primary schoolers to drink. It's a tool for teaching philosophy, for discussing life lessons. If you censor that, where does it end? What other complex metaphors become too risky for students?
And the scope, looking at his other examples, is huge. He didn't shy away from the really extravagant ones either. Verses meant to show historical context or, over-the-top celebration. Like, cook sheep and slaughter cattle for pleasure, must drink 300 cups.
Yeah, that kind of hyperbole. It's used for dramatic effect in historical poetry. It shows the scale of a celebration, maybe a victory, or sometimes even the depth of someone's sorrow or artistic passion.
And the quieter ones, too.
Absolutely. There's the solitary, more philosophical image. A pot of wine among the flowers I drink alone with no companion. That paints a picture of solitude, introspection. Very different from a campus party scene. These aren't instructions. They're literary devices, tied completely to the history and the emotions being taught.
So what we have here is a challenge about boundaries. Where does one policy stop and another begin? Teng Chang Khim is fundamentally questioning if moral rules designed for, say, campus discipline can legitimately spill over into censoring classic literature used in the national school system.
That's the crux of it, yes. The examples he chose effectively demonstrate that alcohol in this tradition is often a symbol. It stands for celebration, yes, but also longing, solitude, the passage of time. It's a complex cultural motif, not just a substance. So the critical question for policymakers becomes, can you actually neatly separate the cultural and historical meaning in these poems from the literal substance they mention? Is that even possible?
And that's the dilemma, isn't it? Because if you can't separate them, what then? The argument really crystallizes into a sharp political critique. If you take the Prime Minister's stated logic for the campus ban seriously, the logic about preventing encouragement to drink, then for policy to be consistent, the Ministry of Education would have to go through the curriculum and remove every single one of these verses.
And that, you see, is the checkmate position Teng Chang Khim is aiming for, rhetorically speaking.
Yeah.
He forces a choice, either commit to what would likely be seen as cultural censorship, potentially alienating a large segment of the population,
Right.
or implicitly admit that the original reasoning for the campus ban might be flawed, or at least not universally applicable without causing major problems elsewhere. He effectively shifts the entire debate. It stops being just about campus management. It becomes a much bigger, much more sensitive issue about protecting the integrity of cultural heritage within Malaysia's diverse educational landscape. It really sets a marker for how these kinds of moral policies might be challenged in our multi-ethnic context.
A fascinating situation with deep implications. It makes you think, doesn't it? Where do you draw those lines between public policy goals and cultural preservation?
It truly highlights that delicate balance, promoting certain values versus protecting the rich diversity that's woven into Malaysia's educational fabric. It's a constant negotiation.
Remember to like and subscribe for more videos like this.